Every election, every war, every big world decision seems to come down to leaders in suits standing behind podiums. But what if those leaders aren't the ones really in control? What if the real power hides in the shadows? Not in the White House or the Kremlin, but inside glass skyscrapers filled with quiet analysts who never appear on the news? There's a company that quietly owns a piece of everything. Your favorite tech stock, your mortgage, your retirement fund, even your government's debt. It's called BlackRock, and it manages over $10 trillion. That's more money than the GDP of almost every nation on Earth. Most Americans have never even heard of it. Its fingerprints are everywhere, from Wall Street to the Pentagon, from Silicon Valley to your local grocery chain. But here's the shocking part. BlackRock isn't just managing wealth. According to insiders and reports, it's shaping the world's future, one investment at a time. Today, we'll uncover how this hidden billionaire network funds world leaders, how it quietly steers global policy, and how it became the invisible empire behind modern capitalism. Let me show you exactly how this happened. The story begins in the late 1980s. A man named Larry Fink, once a young bond trader at First Boston, suffered a massive career blow. He lost $100 million in one bad bet on interest rates. Instead of disappearing, he rebuilt. In 1988, he founded BlackRock, a small investment firm built on one obsession: never losing track of risk again. His secret weapon? Data. Fink developed something called Aladdin, a supercomputer system that could track and predict risk across millions of investments. It was like giving Wall Street X-ray vision. As banks struggled after financial crises, they needed someone who could tell them where the danger was hiding. BlackRock's Aladdin could. By the 2000s, nearly every major bank, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, even the U.S. Treasury, was using BlackRock's technology. They weren't just customers. They were dependent. Today, Aladdin reportedly monitors assets worth over $20 trillion. That's twice the size of the entire U.S. economy. But this story isn't about software. It's about control. Because whoever sees the global money flows sees the future. And BlackRock can see everything. Where governments borrow, where corporations move, where markets panic before the rest of us even know something's wrong. So when the 2008 financial crisis hit, Washington didn't turn to Congress or the Federal Reserve alone. They turned to BlackRock. According to reports, the U.S. government hired BlackRock to clean up the mess, to value toxic assets, to stabilize collapsing markets, and to advise the very regulators meant to control it. Imagine that. The referee asking the player to write the rules. Now here's where things get really interesting. BlackRock didn't just help fix the system. It became the system. Today, BlackRock owns shares in over 18,000 companies worldwide. They're the biggest shareholder in giants like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and even oil companies. If you buy a phone, fill your tank, or scroll online, some of your money flows back to them. But here's the twist. Most people never chose BlackRock. If you have a 401k, an index fund, or a retirement account, your savings might already be managed by them. Without even realizing it, millions of Americans became part of BlackRock's financial web. That web gives the company extraordinary influence. They can quietly vote in corporate meetings, influence CEO decisions, and even push companies to change policies. For example, BlackRock has encouraged companies to go green, to invest in clean energy and cut emissions. Some praise this as responsible capitalism. Others warn its hidden power, an unelected group steering the direction of the world economy. But if you think that's crazy, wait until you hear this. In 2020, when the world shut down, BlackRock was again called to manage the unthinkable. The Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, gave BlackRock the job of purchasing corporate bonds to stabilize markets. That meant one private company was literally deciding which corporations would live or die during a global crisis. Think about that. Not elected officials, not public votes, just quiet meetings and algorithms. And it didn't stop there. BlackRock reportedly worked with governments in Europe, Canada, and Asia during the same crisis. The same playbook: stabilize the system, gain more visibility, tighten the network. From New York to Tokyo, from Washington to Brussels, one name kept appearing in the fine print: BlackRock. But if you think this is just about finance, you're missing the bigger story. Because money buys influence, and influence shapes power. Let's connect the dots. BlackRock doesn't operate alone. It sits inside a triangle of power, alongside Vanguard and State Street. Together, they're known as the Big Three. These three firms reportedly control around $20 trillion combined. They're major shareholders in nearly every major U.S. company, and often in each other. That means when big corporations compete, their top shareholders are often the same few asset managers. So, competition at the top? Sometimes it's just an illusion. But the story gets even deeper. BlackRock's executives regularly meet with world leaders, attend économique forum, and even advise on government policy. Larry Fink, the CEO, has been invited to meetings with presidents and prime ministers. He's been a speaker at the World Economic Forum in Davos for years. And according to reports, BlackRock has quietly hired dozens of former government officials, Treasury veterans, central bank insiders, regulatory experts. It's a revolving door. Public servants one day, private advisors the next. Critics say this creates a feedback loop. The same people who write the rules later profit from them. BlackRock denies any wrongdoing, but the pattern is hard to ignore. Here's another layer. BlackRock's technology, Aladdin, is used by governments themselves, according to Reuters and Financial Times. Even the Bank of England and the European Central Bank rely on it for risk analysis. In other words, the same system that tracks global money is also used by those who run it. Now imagine what that data reveals. How much oil is being traded? Which countries are buying weapons? Where global funds are flowing before conflicts start? If information is power, then BlackRock might be the most powerful entity on Earth. It's not just about watching the system. It's about influencing it. When BlackRock invests billions into a country's infrastructure or its companies, it can gain quiet leverage over that nation's policies. In 2023, reports suggested that BlackRock held significant influence in European energy decisions, Middle Eastern sovereign funds, and even U.S. housing markets. When they buy homes as investments, prices can rise, making it harder for average families to buy. To some, that's just capitalism. To others, it's manipulation of daily life on a global scale. This brings us to the most shocking discovery of all. Behind the scenes, BlackRock's network stretches into the political world, not through elections, but through financing. Let's be clear. BlackRock doesn't fund politicians directly like old-school donors. It funds the systems that fund governments themselves. How? Through control of debt, credit, and institutional investment. When a nation issues bonds to pay for projects or wars, companies like BlackRock often buy those bonds. That means they literally fund governments. In return, they gain visibility into national economies and influence over how global money moves. Think of it like this. World leaders need money. BlackRock helps provide it, and in doing so, becomes the quiet lender behind the throne. According to sources, BlackRock manages assets for sovereign wealth funds, state pensions, and even central banks. That means the firm often represents the financial interests of countries that might be on opposite sides of the same conflict. It's a paradox. One company with influence over everyone, but loyalty to no one. In 2022, when global markets shook from war and inflation, governments reportedly turned again to BlackRock for guidance. Economic reports, crisis management, financial strategy, all quietly drafted by the same network of analysts who once worked on Wall Street. So who really runs the world economy? Is it the politicians you see on TV, or the data scientists behind Aladdin screens? Here's the shocking takeaway. BlackRock doesn't need to own governments. It just needs to be indispensable to them. When every major player depends on your system, you don't need to demand control. You already have it. So what does all this mean for us, ordinary Americans? In simple terms, a small group of financial giants now act as invisible gatekeepers to the global economy. They decide which industries rise, which fall, and which leaders get the economic breathing room to act. When these asset managers push for certain policies, like ESG, environmental, social governance standards, corporations listen, sometimes faster than they listen to Congress. To some, that's progress, private innovation driving change. To others, it's dangerous. Private control replacing democratic choice. Here's the thing. BlackRock doesn't hide what it does. Its reports are public. Its CEO writes open letters about long-term capitalism and responsible investing. But reading between the lines, you see a blueprint for quiet power, a shift from government-driven decisions to algorithm-driven influence. And this isn't science fiction. It's already happening. Every time you invest in an index fund, every time your city borrows for a project, every time the Fed adjusts its policies, somewhere deep inside BlackRock's servers, a data model updates. That model decides risk, and risk decides policy. Long-term, it means wealth and influence will likely keep consolidating, not through conspiracy, but through efficiency. The system rewards those who control the data, and BlackRock built the most powerful data empire of them all. Before we wrap up, there's one final thing you need to know. Remember how we started, with the idea that world leaders might not hold all the power? Here's the twist. Even BlackRock isn't truly at the top. Above it are its clients, the real billionaires, pension funds, and sovereign entities whose money fuels the machine. BlackRock is the architect, but they're the financiers. It's a network, not a single villain. A web of mutual dependence where nations, corporations, and individuals all rely on the same handful of systems to survive economically. It's not good or evil. It's real. It's how modern power now works. The empires of the past were built with armies and flags. Today's empires are built with data and debt. And the people who understand that, the ones who see the invisible network behind every transaction, they don't just play the game. They write the rules. So let's recap. You learned that BlackRock started as a risk-tracking startup and became a global empire. It now manages trillions, touching nearly every company and government. Its technology, Aladdin, sees and shapes global markets. Its influence reaches from Wall Street to Washington, and its quiet power reshapes the meaning of leadership itself. The next time you watch a world summit or election, ask yourself, who really holds the power? The faces we see on camera, or the balance sheets that decide their next move? If this opened your eyes, make sure to subscribe for more stories that expose how money, influence, and hidden networks shape our world. Drop a comment below. Do you think companies like BlackRock are just doing business or building quiet empires behind the scenes? And if you want to go deeper, watch our next video, The Billionaire Families Behind the Global Banking System. It connects directly to what you just learned, because once you see how the system really works, you'll never look at power the same way again.